All right, guys, welcome back to the Pocket Meds channel. It's Matt here. Today, we're going to be highlighting all of the best meta decks so far at the beginning of this new Fantastical Parade season. There's been some online tournaments, a bunch of new decks. They're all battling it out. Early seasons are a ton of fun because realistically, so many different decks are seeing play. Some do well, some don't. It's absolutely insane. So in today's video, I'm just going to be highlighting a bunch of deck lists that have been successful in these online tournaments and have been doing well from a competitive sense. Again, keep in mind here that this is still early season, so a lot of these decks might be completely irrelevant in a couple of weeks. We really don't know, but all of these decks, all of these strategies are brand new and they have been performing well. Before we get into the decks though, you got to go register for PMPT number 18. It is actually tomorrow. Our tournament here, our first tournament of the new season is tomorrow. Very exciting. Saturday, January 31st at noon, $250 cash in the prize pool. Link to register down in the description below. Definitely go and do that. All right, guys. So the first deck we're going to take a look at is Ninetales. By the way, you can use the timestamps to move around the decks in today's video. Also, these aren't in any particular order. So the first deck that we're going to talk about is Alolan Ninetales, which I think a lot of people were very excited to play a card like this, and I am as well. I think it's a very, very fun card. Binding Snow. It only does 80 damage for 2 water energies. However, during your opponent's next turn, they cannot take any energy from their zone and attach it to their active Pokemon. So this is basically like the Bayonet card from back in the day. Cards that, in effects that stop your opponent from attaching energies are very, very strong. And the reason for that, quite frankly, is because you need energies to do anything in the game. If a Pokemon is in the active spot and it has a high attack cost or a high retreat cost, you know, let's just say something like a Kangaskhan EX, especially if it's a Mega Pokemon, then they're going to be in a lot of trouble. I know Kangaskhan can play Ilima and scoop up Kangaskhan, but that's just one example, right? So not a lot of counterplay around kind of getting stuck in the active spot, and that's what this deck is really all about. Now, it does require some setup. It requires some combinations here. I've seen Alolan Ninetales played with the, what's the Pokemon called? Araquanid, which is really funny, and the supporter card that works with that as you know, Gusting works. I've seen some people play Cramorant, but this list did well recently at an online tournament, and it is Greninja. So we all know how strong Greninja is. I think the big upside to playing Greninja, even though it's a stage 2 Pokemon and you're playing it with a stage 1 Pokemon, I think the big upside to Greninja is that it does also add additional damage, and that's a really big deal because, you know, I think the one downside to Alolan Ninetales is that not only is it a stage 1 Pokemon, so that's a little bit tough, but also it only does 80 damage, you know, and in a metagame right now with tons of healing, tons of high HP Pokemon, you're going to be kind of struggling to KO things. That's just the reality. I guess the damage on Ninetales doesn't really matter because if they're stuck in the active, they're stuck in the active, and it doesn't matter how many times we attack them. That's kind of the strategy. Alolan Ninetales, if you can get Greninja out really early and Cyrus up like a Mega Absol on the bench or really anything on the bench that'll win you the game, it's a really strong strategy. Definitely a combo deck, a bit of a control deck. I don't know if something like this is really as good as Suicune and Greninja, but its matchups are going to be really good into decks that just can't really handle this negative effect, right? It is a very strong effect. There are a lot of cards in the game that can basically, you know, completely nullify Ninetales. A lot of the free retreat cards like Leaf or X Speed or the new Stadium card for Psychic Pokemon. We do have Lyra. My nose is all stuffy, I just realized, so I apologize. We have Lyra, we have Ilima, so there's a lot of stuff that can get around this Ninetales effect. It's just about whether or not your opponent has any of those cards and has the ability to do so. So a very fun deck. I don't think Ninetales is necessarily consistent enough for it to be like a top tier meta strategy as the season moves forward, you know, but again, depending on what decks are popular in the metagame, you know, Ninetales could be very effective as a counter meta deck, and I think that's probably where this deck will position as time goes on. If it does continue to see play, it'll likely see play similar to like Decidueye as a deck that is specifically quite good into you know, specific decks. So I love Alolan Ninetales, very, very fun. There, you know, this set B2 Fantastical Parade has so many really cool cards that I think this works with it. We're also playing Team Rocket Grunt in the deck, and I think you kind of have to because if you don't get the Greninja Cyrus combo out, what you want to do is Team Rocket Grunt whatever's in the active, and then if you do discard energies, then they're done. They're never going to be able to put more energies on, right? So, of course, Team Rocket Grunt and Cyrus with Greninja is the core strategy of the deck. Team Rocket Grunt's a little bit consistent in its own right, but hey, a very, very fun deck, a fun strategy, and here is, you know, just a version here of Alolan Ninetales. Next up is actually going to be my favorite Pokemon to come from this set, which is Mega Swampert. This thing is massively underrated, and I'm going to say that with full confidence. I think that Mega Swampert is absolutely broken. 230 HP. It is a stage 2 Pokemon, but it has a retreat cost of 3, which means we can utilize Heavy Helmet, which is really cool. And the Strong-Armed Destroyer attack is incredibly strong. Only 3 energies, which isn't that hard to do when you have things like Manaphy and Mantike in your deck list. But what it does is 150 damage, which is, again, a ton of damage. That's why it's killing a lot of Pokemon in the game. But it also randomly discards 2 random energies from any random Pokemon on the board. And that includes Swampert or your own Pokemon or your opponent's Pokemon. It's a very, very fun card. Unfortunately for Swampert, sometimes you will double discard your own energies, which, you know, doesn't feel great unless we have 4 energies attached. But most of the time, you're going to be discarding 1 energy from like your Pokemon, and maybe you can discard an energy from one of your opponent's Pokemon. And if you do discard energies from your opponent's board, like that's a really big deal, especially if we can get Swampert out early enough, or maybe they don't have a ton of energies on the board. If you can get there before your opponent gets there, it's pretty likely that your opponent's really never going to be able to set up because you're constantly dealing 150 damage and discarding their energies. Keep in mind that we also are super tanky, like 230 HP is crazy. Here's just one example of a Swampert deck that did well at a tournament recently. Now, for me, personally, when I'm playing Mega Swampert, I've been playing it a little bit differently. This deck is playing a Suicune in here specifically so that we don't lose to Oricorio. And I do understand that Oricorio is going to be pretty popular and very, very strong early on in the season. So maybe it does make sense to play one Suicune. And then, of course, we are playing a Marshtomp in the deck because Chinglings also exist. So there's a couple of hurdles. Obviously, those two things can be really difficult for Swampert. But I do think Manaphy is incredibly strong in the deck list because it generates extra energy. So what I've been doing is playing a couple of Manaphys in my deck, and I've also been playing Elemental Switch, which allows us to, if we do happen to discard double energies from Swampert, we can move an energy from one of our extra bench Pokemon back to Swampert and double attach for the turn so that we can kind of get over that downside of potentially double discarding on ourselves. It also just allows you to, more consistently get the 3 energies on Swampert when you want to. Again, only 20 cards in Pokemon Pocket Deck, so we are a little bit limited for space. I think one Cyrus is probably correct. Research Copycats are good cards. Again, Heavy Helmet's going to be really nice. This deck is playing one Irida, but if you only really wanted to heal Swampert, you could, of course, just play Lily because this is a stage 2 Pokemon, which is again what I've been doing. Lucky Ice Pop is a card we definitely have to talk about because this card is going to change the metagame as much as maybe any other card this set. The mathematics, I saw a post on the Pokemon Pocket Reddit that kind of broke down the mathematics for how Lucky Ice Pop works. And you got to keep in mind that the coin flip effect to get Ice Pop back into your hand happens after you heal for 20 damage. So you're guaranteed to heal for 20 just like you're a potion, but then you have a 50-50 chance every time to get that card back into your hand. And the way that the math works out, because it's sort of infinite probabilities, on average, Lucky Ice Pop is healing for 40 damage. So it's basically just a 40 HP potion, but only works for the active Pokemon. But that's a really big deal. It really is. Like if you get lucky with an Ice Pop and you heal 60, 80 damage with it, the game is very different, right? That's a lot of healing, especially along with things like Irida and Lily. So a big HP Pokemon, damage reduction from Heavy Helmet, Lucky Ice Pop, Irida, or Lily in the deck, and Swampert's staying around for a very long time, especially considering sometimes your opponents won't even be able to attack you because you've discarded their energies. I think Mega Swampert has a ton of potential as far as these sort of big high roll, mid-range, late game decks go. It's actually one of the strongest things that we've had added to the game in quite some time. This is kind of what you wanted from, Mega Ampharos, right? This is really what you would have liked to have. It has a lot of tools in its kit. Water type is just a busted type, realistically. So I really love Mega Swampert, and here is just one example of it. I think that the list around Mega Swampert will change as time goes on, but I'm very excited about this Pokemon, and playing it is very, very, very fun. I've had Mega Swampert in the active for like 5 turns sometimes. It just can't go down. It's just such an absolute tank. So yeah, there's Mega Swampert. Again, one of my favorites. Literally, I think my favorite Mega and favorite Pokemon to come out in this set. Very, very fun. I wanted to highlight it. I believe it made like top 8 at a recent tournament, had a really good run. So that is a legit card. This is definitely something that can win games. I don't want people to think that Mega Swampert is just another one of those stage 2, high roll decks. It has a lot going for it, way more than you might think at first glance. Next up is something that, again, you know, this is, I think, straight from the solo battles, but somebody did play it at a recent tournament and did pretty well. And this is going to be Leafeon with Ogerpon, Teal Mask Ogerpon. I don't hate Teal Mask Ogerpon. I think that it's actually a totally fine Pokemon, and it's really nice to be immune from status conditions, right? Now, 130 HP means you kind of are forced to play Leaf Cape, which is fine because, you know, Leafeon EX goes to 170 with Leaf Cape, Ogerpon goes to 160. Those are pretty high HP numbers, especially when you pair them with double Ericas in the deck. You actually have, you know, an archetype of you know, Pokemon that actually is pretty hard to get around. It's a lot of HP here. Grass type is definitely renowned for its just a lot of healing and sustain. That's sort of what the grass type decks do. So I like this, you know. Boosted evolution, Leafeon's going to be really nice to get ahead on the energy curve, and it's going to pile up the energies, right? So you can kind of just leave Leafeon in the active until it goes down, and by then you should have plenty of energies onto Ogerpon where you can hit the full damaging effect of 120 energies. Or 120 damage, rather, with if you have at least like 5 energies across you and your opponent. So if we have 3 or 4 energies on Ogerpon, we're definitely going to hit that requirement and just come in and hit for 120. It's really not bad at all. Like, this is not, I don't think this is something I would consider to be like shockingly like meta defining, but it is just a really consistent, a really decent deck. It's just got some slight things going for it that you just might not really expect to be that big of a deal. But as the game goes on, you realize, well, you know, we're consistent. We got, you know, a lot of HP. Our opponent has to go through 270, 160 HP Pokemon. You know, we have Ericas. It's actually a very, very decent deck list. You know, it's very simple, but it's good. Like, it's hard to really explain. Decks like this just happen to be pretty good based off their consistency, consistent damage, and consistent sustain here with between Leafeon and then Teal Mask Ogerpon. And we can tech in the non-EX Leafeon to 1-hit KO or Oricoreos and whatnot, which is always pretty fun. We have some extra room in the deck to play supporter cards and stuff like that. So, you know, double Erica, double Research, 1 Copycat, Sabrina, Cyrus, and Guzma, really all great cards to have at your disposal throughout games. Just a really nice deck. And again, immune to status conditions because of the Soothing Wind ability on Teal Mask Ogerpon. And that might, again, not seem like that big of a deal, but when you do go up against a deck that is trying to put you asleep or burn you or paralyze you or whatever, it's actually really nice. It's just a nice ability to have. It makes the deck that much more consistent into a wide variety of matchups. So I think that this archetype here might be one of kind of the premier, like, just tempo, you know, consistent grass archetypes. But keep in mind, guys, keep in mind there is an OG that we are forgetting about. We're not going to talk about it in today's video because it's not a new deck, but I do think it's a newly improved deck. So we'll leave that maybe for tomorrow's video. If I do get a video out tomorrow, it's going to be about updated decks, and we're going to talk about old decks that have been improved upon and buffed going into the set. And trust me, there's quite a few. There's quite a few old decks that are looking to be quite good, that some people might be happy about, some people might be disappointed about. Spoiler, you know, Dark Tina, Buzzwole, things like that. That's all I'm saying, okay? That's all I'm saying. But we'll talk about it in a later video. Next up here, the next deck that we got to take a look at are going to be a couple of Mawile decks. So here it is. I know early in the season, everybody always tries to play the Dusknoir stuff. It's a bit of a meme. It's a bit inconsistent. I totally understand here. But this is a really strong card. This is like Dusknoir always saw play in these like weird Exodia decks that were inconsistent, but when they did work, they were absolutely insane. And I think that the Dusknoir Shadow Void ability pairs very nicely with Mawile, which loves to just sit in the active for as long as possible and ramp up its damage with Heat Up Crunch. So that's the entire concept here. You know, run Rocky Helmet to deal some extra damage. We're not even playing Core Booster. Again, all of the damage reduction is being put onto Dusknoir. That's kind of the entire effect here. We are playing a couple Lucky Ice Pops because the card is effectively absolutely broken. Double Copycat, double Research because we are playing Stage 2 Pokemon, so we have to deal with that. Dusknoir technically can get around Oricorio, but this is a deck not playing Psychic Energies. They're likely just going to be playing only Steel Energies because Mawile is the attacking Pokemon that we want to use. So you are a bit reliant on that Rocky Helmet doing enough with Mega Mawile. You are going to live forever basically into an Oricorio with Dusknoirs and Lucky Ice Pops. So yeah, keep in mind, this is a deck list that will kind of just lose to getting Sabrina'd or Repelled because Mawile does not want to leave the active spot because then its damage stacks reset. So that is the counterplay to Mawile. Otherwise, a very strong card. You have a little bit more than a 50-50 chance to lead Mawile in the active, and then you have a 50% chance to, of course, go second, which is what Mawile wants to do. So inherently, this is a deck that has incredibly high upside, right? If your opponent doesn't have a way to get Mawile out of the active, if this player draws into Dusknoirs and they go second and they lead Mawile, I don't know if you can really beat this deck. So it is kind of it's a very simple deck in nature, but it really is kind of an Exodia deck. There's absolutely no way to get over Mega Mawile other than, of course, the elephant in the room, just one KOing Mawile, which there are things in the game that can do that. No damage reduction here, which means that, Kangaskhan can actually hit that 180 number pretty somewhat easily. Things like Charizard can hit it. So there are some ways to just KO Mawile. And again, the Dusknoir stuff is going to make this deck a lot less consistent overall, but is going to make it a little bit stronger on like the high end upside, right, with the deck list. So it's like high roll Mawile. It's like Exodia Mawile. It did pretty well at a recent tournament, so I wanted to highlight it because it is pretty funny. Now, the other deck list for Mawile, I think, really is 19 Trainer, which again, we don't like, Oricorios, and there's really no way around that when you're playing this Oricorio deck, or sorry, with this Mawile deck. And that's always going to be the big, hump to get over here with Mega Mawile, is that like we have to play something, to get around Oricorios. Like that's going to be the difficult part here. But if you're not playing Oricorio and you go second, this is a very, very strong deck list. Double core booster, starting planes to go to 190 HP, double ice pop, double potion, double PCL, double adamant, and a big Malasada as well. This is a deck that just loves healing. It just loves chilling, healing, staying around for a long time, and then just by the end of the game, you're 1-KOing Pokemon. That's the entire concept for Mega Mawile. Again, you do lose to an Oricorio just kind of getting plopped into the active. So that's the downside here. This is kind of a meme deck, but it's one of the stronger meme decks that we've ever had, and I do think it's a completely viable way to play Mega Mawile. That is, of course, if you just don't hit Oricorios. But again, tournament play is different than ranked play because it's less total games. If you play a ranked season, you might play hundreds, if not thousands of ranked games. Mawile in a tournament is only going to have to play like 6 different decks or like 7 or 8 or 9 different decks. So it's actually somewhat likely that you play a tournament and you really don't hit any Oricorios. And if you do, maybe it's 1 or 2 of them and you can still make day 2. So this is totally a viable strategy, I think, in tournaments. That is, of course, unless Oricorio is exceedingly popular, but it's a totally viable way to play Mawile, and I wanted to highlight it because, it's a legitimate card. And again, going second, this deck is absolutely terrifying. All right, next up is, of course, your reminder to hit the subscribe button. Let's zoom out here so you can see this. 45% of you guys that have been watching my content are not subscribed to the channel. We are on the road to 50,000 subscribers, so if you're not subscribed, consider it. Smash that sub button. I would appreciate it. Helps me, helps the community, and that's about it. That's all I got to say. Thank you, guys. All right, now let's get into some stuff that I think is likely going to be considered, the real viable meta contenders this season, which, there are quite a few, as we've already shown, but some stuff is definitely performing a little bit higher than some of the other decks. So Gardevoir here is kind of in the middle. I think that Gardevoir is a very exceptionally strong deck. I think that Meloetta is broken. It's really nice to have Indeedee. And then, of course, Gardevoir with Diantha is a broken strategy. That's the entire thing about Gardevoir, is that it is a strong deck. Now, the difficult part about Gardevoir is that it's really not well positioned at all. It came in at a time that I think there was a lot of pre-built and predisposed counterplays to Mega Gardevoir, right? It also released alongside Obstagoon, which is going to be a tough one. Hydreigon's tough, Charizard's tough. So I think that Mega Gardevoir is a very strong deck, but as I predicted when I first saw this card, is that it definitely is a strong deck, but it's going to maybe take some time for the metagame to develop in a way that is a little bit kinder to Mega Gardevoir. So I know if people were really excited to play this, you still can play it. It's just, you're probably going to run into some things that really don't feel that good from a matchup perspective, which is fine. Not every deck, has the best matchup spread out there. And I think that Mega Gardevoir is strong enough to be considered a real meta deck, while even maybe not being that well positioned at the current time of the metagame. Now, let's address like the elephant in the room, which is that this is like a single pack with like 200 cards in it. So a lot of people have struggled to pull the particular cards they want to. It's a bit easier to pick and choose which cards to go after if there's 2 different booster packs and the cards are split. You can narrow down your sort of choices, but with this booster pack, we don't have that option. So a lot of players, I think, are a little frustrated with that. Of course, especially the people that don't spend money on the game. It's going to be difficult to kind of find the exact card you want in a single pack that's this large. It really really is an interesting design choice from Dina, but that's definitely an elephant in the room, and this is a deck that plays a lot of new cards, which might make it quite difficult to build early on. You know, Gardevoir is new, Meloetta is new, the Stadium's new, Diantha is new, so that's a lot of really new cards that you kind of have to get to play this deck. And that definitely is like the elephant in the room here, but I still think Mega Gardevoir, definitely a strong deck list. I don't really have much else to say about it other than that it's exactly how we thought it would be, based around all of the cards that they provided to us. And I think that it plays just like we thought it would. It's definitely a bit of a linear deck. It doesn't have like a ton of other options other than, of course, you know, setting up Gardevoir and then staying alive with Diantha and then maybe going into DD for certain matchups to take KOs. Like that's the entire concept of the deck. And I kind of told people too that there's really not many other great ways to play this card other than this whole combo, right? And that's what we're doing. Again, a really strong deck, a really good deck. Some great matchups, some horrible matchups, and that's the reality of Gardevoir. So we'll see how it performs as time goes on. Next up is Obstagoon. We made a video on this yesterday. It got first place at really the first tournament of the season, and it's been performing fairly well ever since. I don't know what's going to end up being the top most relevant deck. So, you know, my video yesterday saying this is the strongest new deck might age really poorly in a couple of weeks. It's just, we don't know what's going to happen with the meta. So all I have is the data, the statistics, and the results right now at the moment. So that's why I do think Obstagoon, you know, after winning that first tournament and placing very well, is one of the strongest decks for sure. And this is, I think, basically the exact same list, which is how people are playing this. Chingling Lock, you know, Galarian Obstagoon on the bench, Pierre's discard, Darkrai ping damage plus Absol supporter discard, Rocky Helmet extra damage, and you have yourself a deck that is, you know, a lot of moving pieces here, but extraordinarily annoying to play around if they do get those cards. You know, just imagine it for a moment. Just imagine you're item locked for the first 2 turns, then your opponent goes into Absol, they discard double energies off your Pokemon, and they discard that supporter card from your hand, and all of a sudden we just kind of want to go ahead and hit that concede button, and that's what this deck does. It's definitely just sort of high roll, but it is absolutely just one of the most ridiculous decks you'll play against for sure. And I think it'll likely stick around. In tournament play, a deck list like this, I think just has a ton of potential because of that high roll potential of just being unbeatable in some scenarios. Definitely counterplay to this. We talked about it in our video yesterday. I do think Buzzwole with Lusamine is a pretty direct counter to this deck, which all Pokemon are weak to grass, which is relevant. And I think that there's definitely some other stuff in the game that's going to be pretty decent into a deck like this. Really anything with low energy attack costs or anything that doesn't get countered by Chingling or plays hand disruption is definitely going to be able to beat this deck list. Bench damage also relevant because Absol is definitely a target in this deck list. So if you can get around the Pierres, you can even play Silver to kind of remove that Pierres from their hand. There's a lot you could do. You could also just play other Absol decks, which allows you to discard their Pierres from their hand, right? So, you know, Absol itself does counterplay a deck list like this. It's an interesting deck. Maybe people just sort of move off of this in favor of Hydreigon still as the season goes on. We don't know what's going to happen, but I do think Obstagoon Pierres is just a broken strategy, and this is sort of the premier way to play it, at least right now, early in the season. If you want to see a little bit more about this deck, go check out yesterday's video. Next up is going to be 3 deck lists that I believe are absolutely insane, and we've yet to really highlight them on the channel, but I do think it's most people's favorite new strategy and new card that came out in Fantastical Parade, which is Kangaskhan. We have 3 different Kangaskhan decks here to showcase to you guys, and I think they are all extremely competitively viable. This first one we're going to take a look at is Mega Kangaskhan with Magnezone or Oricorio. This may seem uncreative, I realize, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that it isn't good and that it doesn't make sense. Magnezone here can power itself up, which means that if we did want to just go with the Mega Kangaskhan Magnezone combination, we can do that pretty easily because we can just spend time manually attaching to Kangaskhan. Your opponent has to go through double Magnezones and then deal with Mega Kangaskhan, and that's annoying. If Kangaskhan isn't something we really want to use and Oricorio is valuable, well, we have Oricorio, and we can just play Magnezone Oricorio. And that's the thing about Mega Kangaskhan, is that it's just a colorless basic Pokemon, and it doesn't really negatively impact your deck at all to just play one copy of it. And that's what this deck is. We've sort of cut out a couple of cards that you would typically see in Magnezone Oricorio, and we're playing in favor 1 Mega Kangaskhan, 1 Ilima, and then 1 red. And let's talk about the red Giovanni damage buff interaction with Kangaskhan, because Kangaskhan is sort of a double-edged sword in a sense. It's very interesting. The double punching family attack means that whenever you get a damage buff for that turn, whether it's red or Giovanni or whatever, that damage buff gets doubled because you're attacking twice. So if you play red and you attack Mega Kangaskhan into an EX Pokemon, you're not dealing a total of 120 damage, not 140, it's actually 160 damage, which is absolutely kind of ridiculous. Now, on the other side of that double-edged sword is that damage reduction effects also get multiplied when Kangaskhan attacks. So if Kangaskhan attacks into something with Heavy Helmet, it's actually a minus 40 damage reduction, or like a Furfrou, for example. Anything that has like, hey, you deal less damage this turn, it gets exponentially more countered by those cards because of the double energy effect. So it goes both ways, or the double attack effect. It goes both ways. For instance, like a Metal Core booster means that Kangaskhan here is actually only attacking for, I believe, 30 damage, or yeah, like only 30 damage, which is hilarious. Because the 80 damage attack gets reduced by 50, and then the 40 damage attack also reduced by 50, so 0, so it's only 30 damage. So again, anything that has damage mitigation or damage reduction is definitely a strong counterplay option to Kangaskhan. There's not many of those in the game, other than things maybe like Heavy Helmet on some decks, and then of course Steel type decks, but that is sort of the premier counterplay to Mega Kangaskhan. But again, we're gonna see Kangaskhan almost identically how we would see Arceus back in the day, because this is effectively like Mega Arceus. That's what this card is. Basic, colorless, 3 colorless energy attack cost. Like, that's what this card is. It has a retreat cost of 3 instead of 2. That's an upside and a downside. We still have access to Ilima. So it's got 50 more HP, I think, or 40 more HP than Arceus, but it has a retreat cost of 3, so you can play Ilima with it. You can play Heavy Helmet with it. It really is one of the most flexible Pokemon in the entire game. And when you release cards like this, I think it's good because it's very flexible and you can play it a bunch of different ways. But also it's a little bit toxic because if it is good enough, it's going to be in like every deck, which is kind of what happened with Arceus for quite some time. So here's the first way to play Mega Kangaskhan, which again is just going to be with Orimag, which again, people might be like, that's kind of lame, but whatever, it is still quality. The next way to play Kangaskhan is going to be just like Turbo Arceus Kangaskhan, which is without Oricorio Magnezone, but we're playing Oricorio, Pichu, and Zeraora with Elemental Switch and Serena. So this is what I also want to talk about here. And you'll notice here we also have Red and Giovanni. And again, Lucky Ice Pop here, really good. Starting Plains is going to be extremely good in a deck like this playing only basic Pokemon. So there is a Starting Plains right here. And Starting Plains is going to be really nice in this deck. Boosts the HP of all of these Pokemon, which is really nice. And I think that that is partly why I think I would like to play Kangaskhan in a way like this, because Starting Plains is a broken card. So if you can play it, I think it's worth playing. But the interaction and the combination that I want to highlight here is going to be playing Serena with Mega Kangaskhan. And I think that this is likely the way we should be playing Mega Kangaskhan, because you don't oftentimes want Mega Kangaskhan in the active spot. That's just the reality of it. It's just not a Pokemon you want to lead off with. You want it on the bench so that you can set it up with energies, and then you're good to go. Serena allows you to still effectively increase the odds of getting Mega Kangaskhan onto your bench early, but without maximizing, or I guess increasing the opportunity and probability of leading with it as your active Pokemon. So it's actually, I think, better in most ways to play Serena and Kangaskhan than to play double Kangaskhan, unless you're playing extra copies of Ilima or something like that that can generate energies to it from the bench, which Zeraora can do with Elemental Switch, but it's only one Zeraora and one Elemental Switch. So this is definitely still an Oricorio deck, and I do think that Mega Kangaskhan fits so well in this sort of lightning package with Oricorio that it probably will be the most common way to play Kangaskhan, if not one of the most common ways to play Kangaskhan, but it's not the only ways to play Kangaskhan. So here's the deck list. Like I said, you know, we have the red, we have the Giovanni for the damage buff, Rocky Helmet is always really good, Starting Plains is absolutely broken, the new Stadium, it buffs all HP of our basic Pokemon by 20. Crazy card, absolutely crazy card, and then a Lucky Ice Pop because this card is broken. And that's kind of, you know, that's sort of my initial, I guess, thoughts of Kangaskhan, is that in the lightning packages, it's going to be really good, just like Arceus was really good in those lightning package deck lists. The cool thing about Mega Kangaskhan, though, is that we can play a card that specifically searches for it. And Arceus didn't have that opportunity, which is pretty cool. So again, Serena was a card that never really saw play. There just wasn't a lot of instances where it was worth it to play Serena. I think that Kangaskhan is a great example of why you would play Serena. I think Pinsir could have been an example like that, but Pinsir obviously, you know, not the best card in the game. So that's the only other thing that I could have considered playing Serena with, but Kangaskhan now is going to be that premier partner for Serena. The last deck of this video, and the last Kangaskhan deck, is I think what a lot of people want to see, which is Daycare. This is like traditional Daycare. If you guys remember back in the day, people used to play this deck, but they used to play Arceus instead of Darkrai. And you play Dark Energies here, so you can, like, if you needed to turbo with Magby or Mantike to Darkrai, you could actually attack turn 2 with Darkrai, which is crazy. But we kind of would rather do it with Kangaskhan. And that's what this deck is. It's just Daycare, Kangaskhan. Very, very strong. What's really cool about this deck is that, you know, we have Tyrogue to pressure Oricorios with Giovanni, which is nice. Heavy Helmet reduces damage from Kangaskhan. But again, going second with Mantike or Magby means we can attack on our second turn with either Kangaskhan or Darkrai, which is really cool. We have an Ilima in case we do lead Kangaskhan. This deck is playing double Kang and not Serena Kang, so we'll have to kind of maybe narrow down the deck a little bit. Maybe it's worthwhile running it. We're also playing one copy of May, one Copycat, one PCL, one Cyrus. But here's the deal. If we already have 3 energies on Kangaskhan, let's just say on our 3rd or 4th turn, we can play red to boost the damage of Kangaskhan from 120 to 160. But we can also attach an extra energy to Darkrai that turn as an effective additional plus 20 damage. That's 180 damage onto Mega Kangaskhan, and guess what? We're also playing Starting Stadium, baby. Why not? The entire deck's basics. This is, in fact, one of the biggest advantages, I think, of Kangaskhan, is that it's kind of just like a better Snorlax, where it's got 200 HP, heavy helmet damage reduction, and it can buff extraordinarily high with things like Red and Darkrai and Giovanni. So just an absolutely incredible card here. I do think this deck is a little bit pressured to play Tyrogue for the Oricorio stuff, but I don't even think that Tyrogue is really that good into Oricorio. It still does get one-hit KO'd even with starting plans, and that's difficult. It's always a difficult thing to get around. So you're going to be a bit reliant on Tyrogue plus the Darkrai pings and Giovanni's to get around to Oricorio. It's not like the most surefire strategy in the game. I think that it might be a little bit better if we had room to maybe slot in one Sabrina into this deck so that maybe Tyrogue can deal with one Oricorio, and then, of course, Sabrina to get around the second Oricorio. That's kind of all I can really think about here. But I don't know if Daycare ever really loved the Oricorio matchup. Maybe it was able to deal with it, maybe not. I don't really remember. I didn't play Daycare a ton back in the day. This is like 3-4 seasons ago, but it's back. It's back and better than ever, and I think it's a lot of people's favorite ways to play Mega Kangaskhan. Again, this might be confusing at some degree, but you're just playing Dark Energies, and Magby and Mantike still work because they satisfy the colorless energy conditions for Mega Kangaskhan's attack, but also that single colorless in Darkrai's attack, right? So you attach Dark to Darkrai, you deal 20 damage, you end your turn with Splashy Toss, you get the colorless or whatever energy onto Darkrai, and then on your second turn, you just attach the Dark again, and all of a sudden we're turn 2 Darkrai for 120 damage, plus Giovanni or Red, which is relevant. That's a relevant thing. 160 HP with starting planes, really, really good. But as an also probably your primary option to do all that would just be onto Mega Kangaskhan. So that's, again, there it is. That's Daycare Kangaskhan. I know a lot of people are really excited about it. And yet again, it doesn't fit on the screen, but there is a starting planes down there in the deck list. Comment down below, guys. What do you think you're playing right now? What do you think about this new metagame? Are you excited? Trust me, guys, you're not going to want to miss the tournament this weekend. It will be live streamed Saturday and Sunday. It is going to be just really awesome for the meta progression, seeing all the new decks, how they interact, what decks do well, what decks don't do well. Probably a lot of creativity as well. I think that the results of this tournament will likely kind of warp our ideas of what this metagame looks like moving forward. So it's going to be very, very exciting. But yeah, that's the video, guys. Comment down below. Let me know if I missed anything you're playing that you think is a meta contender that I did not reference. Again, all of these decks are new decks. We'll do an updated decks video later down the line, tomorrow or Sunday or something. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that as well. And then we'll cover the results of the tournament on Monday, as always. So there you go, guys. That's the video. Let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you guys later. Peace out. Have a good one. Have a good weekend. Playing PT number 18. It's gonna be a fun one. All right, let's get out of here. Bye.